Good day, everyone, especially to our esteemed instructor, Dr. Makabenta. How are you? I hope that you are all doing great in this holiday season. Before anything else, let me introduce myself and my fellow reporters from Group 1. First, I am Barong, and together with me is Miss Jaine Ann Ancog, Miss Rechiel Barcenas, and Miss Laiza Mae Bentulan. Now, let's proceed to our discussion, which will be all about the classroom climate, the physical environment, and assessment strategies that can increase motivation. But first, let us read the learning objectives. At the end of the lesson, students will be able to A. Understand the definition of classroom climate. B. Describe the physical environment that is good for students' learning. And C. Enumerate the assessment strategies that can increase motivation. Alright, what is classroom climate? When you hear about the word climate, you may instantly think about the weather, the season, and everything else in between. But what really is classroom climate? According to Ambrose et al. 2010, classroom climate is the intellectual, social, emotional, and physical environments in which our students learn. Did you think that the physical classroom or the virtual platform is the only environment where we learn? No, right? Because through the whole learning process, we are experiencing different aspects of environments, just like the intellectual, social, emotional, or physical. And all those environments collectively is what we call the classroom climate. Next, the classroom climate is a product of the social interactions between and among teachers and students. I've already mentioned that the classroom climate isn't just about the physical environment, right? Because the social interactions of the students and teachers inside the classroom greatly contributes to the environment or ambience or the climate of the classroom. For example, if the students are actively participating in the classroom activities given by the teacher, or everyone is interested in learning because the teacher is happy while discussing the lessons, then we could say that the classroom climate is positive, warm, and inviting. Therefore, it is clear that the classroom climate is also a product of the social interactions between and among teachers and students. Lastly, the classroom climate is also influenced by the physical condition of the classroom that affects the social interaction among the personalities in class. Of course, if the classroom is dirty and everyone can smell a bad odor inside the classroom, then no one would want to talk and they can focus on learning. Then we could say that the classroom climate is negative, cold, or distant. And that's how the classroom climate is being influenced by the physical condition of the classroom that also affects the social interaction among the personalities in class. In other words, the classroom climate is the quality of the environment that is experienced by the students and teachers, affects their behaviors, and is based on their collective perceptions of behavior in the classroom. Now, let's move on to the aspects of classroom climate. And these are the physical, intellectual, social, and emotional aspects. First, physical. This refers to the physical aspect of the classroom and course delivery, such as classroom type, layout, and medium. When we say classroom type, it could be an auditorium, a small classroom, or a laboratory, and many more. For layout, it could be a students sit facing the front of the room, students sit in small groups, or everyone sits in a circle. And for medium, we have face-to-face or online. Next, intellectual. This refers to the intellectual aspect of the course and class, such as course content, class discussion topics, course materials, for example, textbooks or videos screened in class, and the forms and levels of skills and knowledge that students are expected to demonstrate. Third, social. The social aspect of classroom climate refers to the relationships between students and instructors, and the social atmosphere of the class. When we say relationships between students, it could be individualistic versus team-oriented or competitive versus cooperative. When we say relationships between students and instructor, it could be the instructor being approachable or authoritative to the students. And the social atmosphere of the class could be casual, formal, democratic, and inclusive. Lastly, emotional. The classroom contains various emotions, and the emotions can shift quickly. Students and instructor can have different emotional reactions to course materials and class discussions. These emotions can widely range from discomfort to comfort, from anger to joy, from fear to empowerment, from confusion to excitement, and everything in between and beyond. It is also important to remember that instructors may not be able to fully predict or control factors that are brought into the classroom or what may happen in the classroom, but they have a great deal of control and responsibility for the classroom environment they create. Next, we have conducive classroom climate. When we say conducive, it is the classroom climate that is good for learning. The classroom climate that is conducive for learning is one that is non-threatening yet business-like. It is a classroom where, first, specific classroom rules and procedures are clear. Second, these classroom rules and procedures are discussed on the first day of class. Of course, when students already know the do's and don'ts inside the classroom, then they would act accordingly. So the class will be peaceful or organized. And that actually makes a conducive classroom climate. Next, students are involved in the design and of rules and procedures. For example, when we had our first virtual meeting with Dr. Macabenta, she made an agreement with the whole class, right? She asked us for our preferred time schedule for the weekly virtual meeting and even made a poll in the GC for us to answer. That was the perfect example for this, and that contributes to a conducive classroom climate. Next, techniques to acknowledge and reinforce acceptable behavior and provide negative consequences are employed. As we all know, rewards are very important, right? It is a good way of reinforcing good behaviors and also boosts the students' motivation. And of course, punishments must also be established so as to promote discipline and order in the class, which actually makes a conducive classroom climate. And that would be all for my discussion today. Once again, this is Pearly Barong from BSED Filipino 2-1. Now, we will have Miss Jaine Ann Ancog to continue the discussion about conducive classroom climate. Thank you so much.
Good day, everyone. I am Jaine Ann Ancog, the second presenter of the group. So, to continue the topic, we have here next the clear limits for unacceptable behavior are established. Limits need to be set to distinguish unacceptable behavior. This is done through the establishment and enforcement of class rules. Like for example, Students and learners should discuss some of negative behavior in the classroom in order to agree on a set of rules which should then be posted in a room, and teachers must tell students how they will help each other to obey and follow the rules. Next is that there is a healthy balance between dominance and cooperation. So what is dominance? So dominance is the learner's ability to provide clear purpose and strong guidance to students with both academic and behavior. So teachers' dominance at lesson promoting cooperation, the awareness of students' needs and guidance are successful strategies to improve students' learning in a classroom. Like for example, if the lessons involve activities, discussions of problems, and instructions, the application of dominance and cooperation must be observed. Thus, teachers are expected to set clear rules for conducting discussions and also expected to promote cooperation among students. That way, there is a balance between dominance and cooperation. Moving on, teacher is aware of the needs of the different types of students. Understanding your students' needs will help you to provide them with quality learning opportunities. It's the most effective way to provide most appropriate and meaningful learning strategies to the different types of students. Also, this is important so that you can choose and provide the learning resources best suited to each student. Next, teacher is fully aware of the happenings in class. So we have that skill called teacher with itness, in which it allows teachers to know what is going on in the classroom at all times. So why is it that the teacher must be aware of the happening in class? So by being aware, you can better understand your students' strengths and their needs going forward. Also, you can find out how children learn to understand and respond to others. And lastly, the students' responsibility for their own behavior is enhanced. So students' accountability is an important trait to develop in your students. It helps them take responsibility for their actions, learning, and helps improve academic performance and achievements. So by that, in return, students learn to value their work and likely increase their levels of confidence and self-esteem. So let us move on to the importance of a positive classroom climate. So a positive classroom climate is related to students' academic achievement and well-being. So students are more likely to be intellectually engaged when classroom and school learning climates reflect effective use of learning time, positive learner-student relations, and positive disciplinary actions. Like for example, students who study in a positive learning environment have been shown to be more motivated, engaged, and have a higher overall learning ability. Next, it supports positive social interactions or teacher-learner relations. So in a positive classroom climate, the relationship between a teacher and a student is essential for it to impact classroom management, which includes the learning, the growth, the mental well-being of the students. By having this positive relation, students are more likely to take risks, more motivated, and have a high self-esteem. Next, it encourages active student engagement. So by having a positive classroom climate, it enables students to actively engage in your class discussion and group activities. Make students to be more excited to learn new things, participate in learning, and most especially demonstrate a positive attitude. Next, it allows students to assume responsibility for their own learning and behavior. So, as what I have said earlier, students' accountability is an important trait for a student to possess. With the help of positive classroom climate, you can be a responsible student with your learning and behavior. And lastly, it boosts self-motivation. So, learning through a positive classroom climate affects your self-motivation. It provides better social interactions that will boost your motivation because you as a student is being aware that you are surrounded by positive things and people, and that makes you also feel confident. So, we have here next the considerations for classroom climate. So, stereotypes may cause alienation and marginalization among those who are the target of unfair generalizations. Students who have experienced stereotypes or expect to be viewed or judged in a certain way may encounter tensions and cognitive disturbances that interfere with learning. So, what is stereotypes, DI? So, stereotype is the unfair, no untrue belief that many people have about or things with a particular characteristics. An example of this is like the belief no nga ang girls are better at words and languages than boys ko no, and that ang boys are better in math than girls. So with that, stereotyping may lead to low self-esteem to children. Next is that instructors can influence the tone of the class environment through their interactions with students and other modes of communication, including the syllabus. Okay, so kabantay mo if you feel comfortable with your teachers, you are not afraid to ask him or her questions, raise your concerns, or like you are not afraid to communicate with them. Unlike those teachers nga we feel strict kay magduduha ta mo approach kay lagi mahadlok. Maoni siya, the interactions of our instructors really affects the classroom environment. Okay, next is the student-student interactions both inside and outside of class can affect the overall climate. How the instructor addresses negative interactions will have an impact on student learning. So as what I have said earlier, no, instructors play a big role in accordance of the classroom environment. And lastly, course content that includes a variety of perspective or that represents multiple views is more conducive to a positive climate. So we have here next the 7 ways to manage classroom climate. So first, incorporate diversity into your course and use inclusive teaching practices. Second, use icebreakers and collaborative learning to give students the opportunity to get to know each one another. Third, include diversity and disability statements in your syllabus. Fourth, address incivilities right away. Fifth, establish ground rules. Sixth, check in on classroom climate periodically. And seventh and the last, make efforts to connect with students. That would be all for my topic. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Miss Ancog. Moving forward to our discussion, we have physical environment. So conducive physical learning environment is one that allows maximum interaction between teacher and students and among students, allows students movement without unnecessary distraction, allows teacher to survey the whole class, safe, clean, and orderly, well ventilated, spacious, and adequately lighted, and makes possible rearrangement of chairs as the need arises. Okay, so does physical environment affects the classroom climate? Or is physical environment important? Okay, so physical environment can be related to both student achievement and student behavior. A well-maintained and safe physical environment of high quality fosters positive attitudes and motivations related to students' ability to learn, academic achievement, and pro-social behavior. So before anything else, do you know what is physical environment? Okay, so it refers to the overall design and layout of a given classroom and its learning centers. So the teachers should design the environment by organizing its spaces, furnishings, and materials to maximize the learning opportunities and engagement of every child. When they set out to design an effective physical environment, the teachers should consider all of that environment various aspects. Okay, so we have here the physical classroom condition. So the classroom must be clean and orderly set up. So as we can see, all the classrooms, we always maintain the cleanliness and the orderliness of the chairs, the tables, di ba? Well-organized ang mga materials. And then the classroom must have natural light and flowing fresh air. So in a classroom setting, we need fresh air, we need the light to be comfortable to learn, diba? So we the students need tag fresh air. That's why we open the windows, diba? Kaya we need air in order to be comfortable, diba? And then, free from noise coming to surroundings. So, wala man siguro estudyante nga ganahan ng mga distractions, di ba, sa pagtuon nila. So, okay, the next one is the doors and windows can be opened and closed with less difficulty. So, that's all for the physical classroom condition. Moving on to the next, we have the furniture arrangement. So the furniture, like tables for demonstration, is located in front of the room. So as we notice, if we are entering a classroom, diba, we notice that the tables or the teacher's table must be in front of the room. Okay? So nadyo na sa atubangan sa mga estudyante. And then the chairs are neatly arranged with sufficient spaces in between. So as we notice, every classroom, the chairs must be arranged in and well organized, diba? There's spaces in every chairs, diba? Dili pud kayo layo, dili pud kaayo duol. Lang sakto lang para comfortable ang mga students sa ilang pagtuon. Okay, so display shelves are located at the side. So, wa man siguro to kakita og mga classroom no nga ang mga shelves are located at the back or at the front. Kaya usually, we see the shelves in both sides, di ba? At the sides of the classroom. And then, teaching devices are placed in the nearby cabinets. So, mga teaching materials or devices should be put in the cabinets para dali ra matud-an if ever gamiton ang mga devices or materials. Okay, so that's all for the furniture arrangement. So if there is furniture arrangement, there should be a seating arrangement. So the traditional rows in columns are ideal for establishing classroom management. So it is traditional for us, di ba nga, atong mga chairs sa eskwelahan is naka-column, naka-arrange, naka-align in by column and by rows para neat o well-organized ang mga chairs. And then, para sa nindot siya tan-awon. And then, position student desks so that they face the center when you are having a discussion. Okay? So, situate chairs around tables so that students do not have their backs facing you. So, mga to kong giingon nga, the students must be comfortable with their chairs and tables. And then rearrange the chairs during group activities for fast exchange of communication. So, as we notice, teachers are used to, we are used to task by group activities, like, diba, in every subject natin mga by group activities. And then we need to para maka-brainstorming ang by group, we need to para maka-brainstorming ang every group, need natong tapok-tapok, di ba? As usual, magtapok-tapok ta, mag-create of circles, and then mag-brainstorming. Di ba? As we can notice nga, ma-rearrange ang mga chairs. So, dili man na nato malikayan nga ma-rearrange ang mga chairs kay di ba alangan naman if mag-by group activities mo and then nanggibarog ka, di ba? So we really need the chairs. That's why ma-rearrange ang mga chairs during group activities. But after the activity, however, and then after sa mga group activities, di ba, okay, so rearrange the chairs during activities for fast exchange of communications. So that's all for my part.
Okay, so now let's talk all about assessment strategies that can increase motivation. So, an indispensable part of the teaching learning process is assessment. It is usually at the end of a lesson plan termed evaluation. A lesson plan is not complete without an assessment. Okay, so in teaching learning process, assessment is really necessary and it usually takes place at the end of the lesson plan because it is a tool that the teachers used in order to evaluate whether the students are learning or not. And assessment is at the service of learning. Thus, the phrase assessment for learning. Assessment is meant to ensure that learning takes place. This is possible only when the assessment process motivates students to learn. Okay, so if we talk about assessment talaga, it is all about learning. It is used to assess students' learning because by doing an assessment, teachers will know the difficulties of the learners. And by knowing the difficulties of the learners, they can make a plan or another strategies that is effective to the learners. And to ensure that learning takes place, assessment process must motivate students to learn. But my question is, how can assessment motivate students? Right? Because if we talk about assessment, if our teacher will say, prepare for tomorrow because we will be having an exam. It is like a threat to all of the students, right? So later on, we will know how assessment can motivate students to learn. Okay, so now I will define first what is a motivation. So motivation is defined as the process whereby goal-directed activity is integrated and sustained. Pintrich and Chunk, 1996. In the realm of higher education, student motivation can be thought as the overall drive of the student to succeed in the classroom. Learning is the goal-directed activity. So, ang motivation pala, it is the process in which your created objective is taught and maintained. Kung sa Tagalog pa, kung ano ang iyong ginawang layunin, yun din ang iyong ituturo. Because if your objective is not aligned in your lesson or your activity, how can the students can learn? Matingala na sila unsa na lang imong gipang tudlo. For example, if your objective is the same to your activity, but your lesson is not what you thought ang naa sa objective. So, the learners will not be motivated at all. Kay wala naman sila kasabot sa imuhang gipang istorya. Kay wala na align ang imuhang objective and your lesson and the activity. Next, how to use assessment to motivate students. So while we must evaluate students' work, we also need to develop opportunities of our students to think about their work and use our corrective feedback to develop next steps for meeting the learning targets we have set. Okay, so teachers often spend countless hours grading papers, only just they have students look at their scores and toss it in the waste basket. So, as a future educator, we will not just give their scores, however, we will give them a chance to analyze their work so that next time they can think what things they must need to do to meet the learning targets. Naapagina sa kanang lesson ni ma'am no, ni Mama Kabenta sa kanang constructivism katong lighting the fire nga the teacher gives opportunities for learners to explore and discover. Okay, next. How assessment affects learning. So, we have two different types of students, the good one and the weak one. So, difference between good students and weak students is that good students are able to absorb our feedback and use it to create a pathway toward understanding learning targets. Weak students, however, have trouble understanding feedback and need us to give them specific next steps in order for them to develop growth mindset and see a path toward understanding. Okay, so ang good student, the feedback that the teachers given to them, they take it as a motivation and they take it as a way to succeed to meet the learning targets of the teachers. So, unlike our good students, our weaker students often have given up trying to understand the comments or the feedback of the teachers. And because they don't know how to understand and improve, they often dismiss school. Muundang ra na sila mga markabahala ra na sila, ingon ra po na sila, I don't care, grade is just a number. Grade doesn't define who I am. So that's how assessment affects learning between the two, the good one and the weak student. Next, assessment strategies that can increase motivation. So, classroom assessment and principles of assessment tell us the following. First, make clear your learner's objective every time. So it is good if students are clarified on the objectives they are working on and the criteria that will be used in evaluating their learning. So learners need to clarify the objective they're working on as objective provide a means in clarifying the evaluation. And kay di ba kung unsa tong objective, maupod na ang atong assessment. So by knowing that, by clarifying the objective, our learners will be motivated to learn, as well as by clarifying the criteria. So they already know the objective and the criteria, so they will do their best to achieve that. So that's why they will be motivated. Second, make your students own the lesson objective. So allow them to set their own personal learning targets based on the lesson objective. Initially, their personal target may be lower than the learning target set for the class, but with the expectation they will gradually bring them up according to their pace until their personal targets coincide with the class target. Okay, so we will allow our students to own the lesson objective because what if our objective kay lisod ra para nila, so they can make their own steps how to achieve our our lesson objective, our class target. Okay, number three, the last number, engage your students in self-assessment. Okay, so they have established their own target against clearly set lesson objectives. They are in the best position to determine if they have met their own targets and the class target or objectives. Okay, so after the students have their own learning target, it is better to have them assess themselves, because if we will give our learners an opportunity to evaluate themselves with their own performance, they will bring to mind the personal task and the strategies that they must need to do para effective ilahang pagkatuto. Kay di ba kung ato ang tagaan atong mga students og time para self-assessment, makahibaw sila how far or narrow their knowledge about the topic. And by knowing their level of intelligence about the topic, they can make a plan or strategies that is effective for them. Okay, so that's how assessment can motivate students to learn. And I think that's all about our topic. Thank you for listening, and I hope you learned something.